Welcome back aboard Arabella. If you were watching last week, you saw our trip toward New York City cut short with an engine issue. So our first step will be to get that sorted out. And later this episode, Steve and Robin will sit down with the charts and go into the details of the journey ahead and how they plan to make it all the way to Puerto Rico and escape the New England winter for the rest of the year. The morning after coming into Newport, Steve was able to get in touch with an engine tech that would help him start troubleshooting the issue. And it only took a little testing to determine that the engine itself was totally fine.
So today I've been chasing wires and figuring things out. And here's our issue. So there are two sets of plugs. One was just below this box and the other one was at the engine. And there's a cable that connects them. So these are all quick to connect plugs meant to just kind of pop apart. And what happened is if we open one up, the wires go in and then each one just has a corresponding metal tang in there. And the other end has a corresponding female slot. So what happened is water got in here, and it doesn't take much, and these corroded. So this one wasn't too bad, but some of these, you can see the corrosion in the end. And that is what was giving us our bad connection. So I talked to Brooke from Nani Diesel, who's the rep in this area. That's who we got the diesel from. And Jesse from Bosch Marine, who is also the tech that helped us out figuring out the previous diesel issues. And with talking with them, they suggested that I chase all the wires, which made sense, and chase all the connections, which I did, which led to these bunk plugs. And I talked to Jesse about kind of the best way to deal with that. We could get plugs remade, which would take some time and cost some money. We could hardwire them, which is the option I ended up taking, and we're going to do a little modification later, which I'm not set up at the moment to do. I got to buy a couple parts, but we'll rewire down by the engine a little bit different later. So what I did is just went through and one by one cut one wire on one side and went to its corresponding on the other and cut that and then connected them together. So I still need to go through and heat shrink all of these. And then you can see the wire, the cable that joins has a couple extras that aren't in play. So I just capped these so that you could connect to them at some point if you want. But these aren't really doing anything. They're unconnected at the other end as well. So once these are heat shrunk and this is all wrapped up, it should be a lot more water resistant than this guy. We also need to do some sort of cover for this box, keep some of the water out, and that has been suggested in the past, so you folks were correct. I can eat some crow on that one, just haven't got around to it, but we'll have to bump that one up the priority list a little bit. Down below by the engine, it's the same situation right now. But we're going to switch those out at the engine for a terminal block. And we'll get to that later and show you that. But basically now we can't really disconnect this easily. So we will make the engine end easy to disconnect and easy to do diagnostic testing. But since this is the one that was the worst and this is the one that is the most likely to get moist again, we did butt connections. We're going to seal it all up. So thankfully, this was an easy fix. Thankfully, it's a very inexpensive fix. And in true fashion, we are getting shaken down and finding bugs and weak areas and making them stronger. We got rocked last night. I mean, we've gotten rocked worse. We are firmly in the path of these northern gales, but we are doing what we can to make our way south. I think the winds are supposed to die down and the sea state is supposed to die down later today. So I think maybe we'll run overnight and continue down Long Island Sound. But in any event, we're going to take every chance we can get to make some miles. Down below, it's, not too bad. We're moving around and the wind's been whipping, but as soon as you stick your head above deck, you really feel it. A 20, 30 knot wind when it's 40 something degrees out is brisk, to say the least.
The wind and waves got much stronger overnight, and when they awoke the next morning, the tender was gone.
Figured a PFD is probably a good idea.
Yeah, please.
Okay, paddle me?
All right. There you go, babe. Hey, I love you. Please be safe.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like this at all. Although he looks fine. God, why is he so fine at everything? I could never do that. I can't see anything. I don't completely lost sight of him. Got rocked all night last night and woke up to find that Victoria had we had pulled the eye bolt right out of the hull. Fortunately, the wind blew her right into shore. We can see her. Well, you can't see her. We can see her with binoculars somewhere in this kind of region here. And Steve suited up with a couple wetsuits and is paddling in to shore, which I don't love the idea. All right, there she is. Oh, poor Steve, he must be so cold. It's like a solid 30 something degrees out with like 20 knots coming in from the east. Here he comes. Oh, I'm so glad he didn't go in. I got a hot tea waiting for him. I was nervous.
My toes got wet.
After 4 days of bobbing in the harbor, Steve was eagerly awaiting a gap in the weather so they could keep making their way. And the next morning, they made the decision to go for it. Rounding Point Judith, they turned west into a stiff headwind. Even under engine power, Arabella was making pretty slow progress. But it was progress.
Woof, what a day.
Yeah, it's not as bad as it could have been. And it was generally unpleasant.
We're moving along now.
Yeah, it's definitely getting better. The seas are laying down. We got a seagull coming to visit us right here. This guy is trying to figure out where he's gonna land.
Oh,
He's gonna land! I hope he does! Yeah, buddy!
We'll motor through the night. It's supposed to be pretty calm, so that'll be nice. We'll be able to trade off sleep in and actually get some rest. We'll just motor along, and then tomorrow morning they're saying decent wind at 5 and then kind of climbing, and we should be taking it on the beams, so we might actually get to do some sailing tomorrow and hopefully get into Noah's mooring by, I don't know. I'd love to be there by midday. I don't know if we'll be there by then, but we'll see.
According to this, at a pace of 4-ish knots, 3.8 knots, we should be there around 1 p.m.
We're gonna move as quick as we can on any day that we can, and then once we get to where, I don't know, even a high of 60 for the day, we'll start to slow down and enjoy it a bit more. But
Yeah.
right now, we just gotta make some miles.
Yeah. I think that was our first overnight, just the two of us. Oh no, we did one other overnight, just the two of us. But yeah, this was the first overnight we were really in the ocean. There's just nothing to hit. There's nothing to worry about. There's nothing for like 20 miles around us. And it makes it a little bit easier. But this was coming through, I was at the tiller coming through Fisher's Island. And coming around the point here, just rounding this corner, there's some shoals in here, and you have to kind of thread through this, narrow kind of channel, and then you get kind of back out into open, safe waters. But I was at the tiller just getting rocked, just pulled around by the current. And I've never felt like the tiller, like just in my hands, like fighting me, like shaking. I was like using all my strength to like stabilize it. And then all of a sudden we'd hit something and the boat would just, whoo, and we'd be like in the total rock. I'm like, oh my gosh, we weren't close to anything. We weren't gonna like get pushed into rocks or anything, but it was the first time I felt the boat in that type of a current, and doing that at night, like in unfamiliar water I'm proud. I feel like I did that. It was great. It was safe. And
yeah, and then we cleared Fisher Island, doing like 5-6 knots, motor sailing. That was a good run.
I woke up as you were kind of getting to like Bridgeport, and I was shocked that we were in Bridgeport, because when I went to bed, we were doing less than 2 knots.
And then thank you, Noah, for getting us the dock in Norwalk.
And now the exciting part, the future.
Yeah, what's coming up?
What comes next? So we need to we're here in Norwalk, and basically tomorrow looks pretty warm and sunny. We're gonna move to City Island. We were told about an anchorage sort of in this area where we can spend the night. And then Saturday, the plan is to run through Hell Gate, which we've done a ton of research about. And so it sounds like we are picking a good day. We have the timing sorted out. And we'll come down the East River, basically trying to hit Hell Gate at high tide, and then ride the tide out the East River and over to Sandy Hook, where we can hang until, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Forecast can change, but sort of the run down the Jersey Shore is one of those, like, you gotta like find the right weather window. It can be pretty spicy from what we understand, and it looks like we might get like 2.5 beautiful back-to-back days of like 15 knot winds coming off the land from the west, and like 2-foot seas down the whole Jersey Shore. So I think we're gonna try to hit that, which puts us to Cape May like early next week.
Once we get around Cape May, we've got options. And options are nice. And this is where I would love to hear whatever insights, input, advice y'all have. Because if we don't do one route this time, we might do it the next time when we come back up. So any knowledge that we gain now going south is going to also be super helpful when we come back north in the spring, depending on what weather lets us do and what route we end up taking. So if we come around Cape May, we have a couple options. We can duck in, recharge, wait for a weather window, and shoot offshore and come all the way down around Virginia and come into Norfolk or Virginia Beach, James River, somewhere in here. But kind of like coming through New Jersey, this is very exposed and there's not a ton of easy places to jump in and hide. So what a lot of people do, and I think there's a really good chance that we'll end up doing this, is we'll come past Cape May and we'll get into the Delaware Bay and we'll go up the Delaware River to the C&D Canal, which stands for Chesapeake and Delaware. We'll run across the C&D Canal and that'll put us into the Chesapeake, and we would run all the way down the Chesapeake down to Norfolk. Going from Cape May straight offshore down to Norfolk is obviously the shortest route, but we're going to need a really good weather window, and this time of year, those are tough to come by. So we could end up waiting in Cape May or around there for a while to get that weather window. And if we're going to sit and wait for the weather window, we might as well just move and go explore new areas, because we don't need as nice weather to navigate the Delaware or the C&D and down the Chesapeake as we do to be offshore. It's just a lot more protected waters, and there's a lot more places to duck into. And I personally would be pretty psyched to go check out the Chesapeake. There is a huge sailing history there with the oystering and the crab fishing and everything else. The Chesapeake is really just steeped in it, and I think it would be a super cool place to sail and check out. It's totally different than anywhere where we've been with Arabella yet. So I think there's a good chance that we'll end up going that route. If we do that route, we would absolutely love to do some meet and greets, meet some of the patrons that are down that way, folks that, we're not able to make the trek all the way up for launch or to come to any of the open houses. And now we are bringing Arabella to your neck of the woods. But we need some help kind of figuring out places to stop and places where we could potentially do that. So if you are along the Delaware, the C&D, down the Chesapeake, and basically down to around Moores Head, North Carolina, and you have local knowledge, maybe you know of a mooring or a dock space we could tie up to, maybe you're a member of a yacht club that would like to host, shoot us an email, let us know. We'll add it to the contact list. And as we get closer and start poking our way down, we'll see if any of these spots kind of work out with our timing and our weather, and we'll let people know. But those resources have been so helpful and have made such a difference. We are sitting here at a dock in Norwalk, and we would not be if we didn't know Noah and he didn't get us helped out with this. So we're hoping for some similar local knowledge going down through the Chesapeake and down to North Carolina. And hit us up. Let us know what we need to look out for, things that we should definitely see and do, and places that we should stop. The best way is just to shoot us an email at acorn@arabella@gmail.com, and that's on the website. You can also just go to the website and email us through there. It's not quite as smooth as directly through Gmail, but we'll still get it. The comment section is a little tougher to sort through. Email is really nice because I have folders set up for information for everyone that sent stuff in for Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. So they're all just in a folder. And when we start planning next summer for Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, I can open that folder up where if things are in comments, they're a little bit harder. So emails are really easy for us to sort and keep track of.
Coming out of the Chesapeake, we basically would, provided we want to stay inland, we have two options. We can jump onto the intracoastal here, or we can go through the Great Dismal Swamp, which apparently is a lot cooler than the name would have you believe. So we've heard really cool things about the Dismal Swamp. But either way, we have a couple options here. And then, from here, we would jump into the intracoastal and follow that basically down to Morehead City and Beaufort, where at that point, we've got some kind of big decisions to make.
So between here and North Carolina, we've got to get the boat hauled and painted. But I need warm enough weather to haul and paint the boat. So it might happen somewhere in the Chesapeake. Probably will happen down in North Carolina, where it's a bit warmer. In any event, we get down to North Carolina. If we haven't hauled yet, we get the boat hauled and painted. And then we've got some big decisions to make. So we've really got two options. Our prime option, the one that we hope for, is to head offshore from North Carolina down to Puerto Rico and then work our way back through the Bahamas, Florida, and Georgia in the spring. Now, there's a lot of people who are pretty anxious about that plan, and there are some things to consider doing that voyage. There's the Gulf Stream that runs along the coast. So it starts down by the Gulf of Mexico, comes off Florida, heads up the eastern coast, and then out towards Europe. And that's what helps carry that warm water up to Europe. Now, if you have current going one way and you have wind going another, you create this wind over tide, wind over current situation, and it creates very steep, very tall, very nasty waves. And if we were to run offshore from, say, Rhode Island, and were to do the traditional, like, Newport to Bermuda, we are not fast enough for this short of weather window to not run the risk of getting caught in the Gulf Stream at the start. So if we get caught out in a storm, it's one thing. If you get caught out in a storm in some place where the Gulf Stream, where you have a wind over current situation, it's a totally different thing. That current goes really close to North Carolina. So if we can get down to North Carolina, we only need a 2 or 3 day weather window to get clear of that current, to get out east and south far enough that we're pretty much out of the track of the storms that come up the East Coast, pick up the trade winds, and run those on a beam reach down to Puerto Rico. And that would set us up really well for cruising the south coast of Puerto Rico, riding the trade winds to the Bahamas, taking the trade winds through the Bahamas to Florida and back up. Basically, it's setting up the spring of 25 to be washed. Now, if we get down to North Carolina and we don't feel comfortable, if the weather windows don't materialize, if the experienced crew to go with us, we want 4 people for that run. So Rob and I and 2 others. If that doesn't materialize, then what we'll do is we'll just continue down the coast and we'll hit South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and our kind of consolation prize will be making it to the Bahamas, probably, which, you know, that's not a bad place to be for the winter. But if we get to the Bahamas, we're not going to want to beat into the wind past Haiti, past the Dominican Republic to try to reach Puerto Rico. Going past those when we have the wind in our favor is very different than trying to beat out into it. So if we get to the Bahamas via the coastal route, I think that'll be about where we stop, and then we'll turn around and come back and we'll do all that water again. So that's why we really are hoping to be able to go offshore to Puerto Rico and kind of make a big loop out of it and less of an out and back. But it'll really just depend on the weather and the crew and what that looks like when we get there.
So this is a personal locator beacon. So you can take this as is and stick it in your pack or your canoe or whatever, but you can also mount them inside the inflatable flotation jackets, and this will automatically deploy if the jacket inflates. So pros and cons on that. Pro is if you end up in the water and your jacket inflates, this goes off, you're good to go. Con is testing the jacket becomes a little bit trickier. And then also if your jacket accidentally inflates, this goes off as well. So the real great thing about these is it is basically an EPIRB, so a satellite response, emergency response for you, but it also functions on AIS. So hypothetically speaking, Robin and I are sailing solo overnight, and I go down to sleep for a couple hours, and I come back up on deck, and Robin's gone. When did she fall off? Where did she fall off? What conditions did she fall off? We have no idea. Now, if that same thing happened and I were asleep down here and Robin were to fall overboard and she had this on her, she can manually activate it, or we can set it up to go automatic with the vest. This will send an alarm to anybody with AIS on in VHF range. So all of a sudden, Robin hits the water, she activates this, it goes off on its own. All of a sudden, my chart plotter down here and on deck is going beep, 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 man overboard, man overboard, man overboard, as well as showing up on any other vessel around us with AIS. So all your ferries, all your commercial fishing boats, all your big container ships, they all have AIS, and this will send every one of them within VHF range a notification that somebody's in the water and somebody needs rescuing. So as Acer puts it, ACR on their box here, your best last chance. And that's pretty much what this is. So you are in the water and you need to get found. This is your best last chance. So they are not the cheapest things. If you want to help us out with these, we threw them up on the wish list a little while ago, and then I completely forgot to mention that they were there. And with the trip coming up offshore around New Jersey and beyond, we really wanted to get them and get them fired up. So I broke the bank, got them now. But if you head over to the website, you can check out the wish list, and if you like helping us recoup a little bit of the cost of these, that would be awesome. But yeah, considering how much safety these bring, I think they are worth every penny. Because if I was fallen in the water, or Robin or one of the crew was in the water, I would be very much wishing that I had spent the money on something like this so that we could turn around and find them and pick them up.
I'm jealous. Our first Thanksgiving on the boat.
It is our first Thanksgiving on the boat.
Our meal is beautiful.
Yeah, not too bad. No turkey. I feel like that's overkill for two of us on the boat.
Yeah.
But we got our roast chicken and our stuffing, some Brussels sprouts with bacon, some mac and cheese, some rolls, and some pie for dessert.
Yeah,
That'll
that's
do.
perfect.
All right, let's dig in.
So hungry.
Obviously, I'm back here at the engine.
Yeah.
Just checked the oil here. And whenever I'm back here, I always just take a minute and look around. Make sure nothing seems loose. Make sure nothing's leaking. Gotta put the cover back on that. But one thing I noticed down here is these top two are tight, but these bottom two are loose. So this is the coupling that holds our prop shaft to the transmission. It's got 4 bolts, and 2 of the 4 are a little loose. So let's snug those up before we start motoring towards New York City. Feel good?
I feel great.
All right, let's do this.
You can catch trout this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put your hand under the banks and you feel for them. They were close. I want to catch one so bad.
You'll have your day.